Welcome. My name is Einar Selvik, and I have been invited here today to give you lessons in the obscure art of Norwegian river dance. You've all been fooled. No. Somebody wants to get in, it seems. Should we? Yes, my name is Einar Selvik. I come from a small island north of Bergen in western Norway called Oslo, situated between tall mountains and deep fjords. A beautiful place. I have come here today, been invited here today actually, to both sing for you, play for you, and also talk a little bit about what I do and how. This is an instrument called kraviklyre. It's a lyre found in a small place called Kravik in Norway. We're not exactly sure how old this instrument is. I have to say, this is a replica. It's not the actual instrument, of course. But the actual instrument you can see displayed a couple of 100 meters away from here, actually, in Vikingskiphuset. But what we do know is that the instrument type itself is very old, several thousand years old, and we find the use of instruments like this in everything from ancient Greece to places in the Middle East. In England we have several findings of it, in Germany, and also here up in the north with from Viking Age, for instance, in Hedeby in Denmark. And this is the Norwegian version. The oldest instrument ever found, the oldest lyre instrument, that was actually recently destroyed by ISIS, which is a real pity. What I do is I make new music using the oldest instruments we have here in the Nordic countries. And for me, that is really important, the fact that I make new music. It's not about reenacting the past or living on some romantic idea or working out of some romantic idea about the past, that everything was so much better back in the days and stuff like that. It wasn't, I'm sure of it. Maybe some things. It is more about making something new with some old thoughts and ideas and tools, because I do believe that there are a lot of things from our past that we do need today, that we do need to remember, that still carry just as much relevance today as it did thousands of years ago. So that is sort of the ultimate goal of what I do, my approach to historical instruments. And the last 15 years, I've just completed a trilogy, album trilogy concept called Runaljord, which is basically making music to the Proto-Scandinavian set of runes. The runes are, of course, our ancient writing system, but apart from being a writing system, the word itself, the origin of the word ru, as in runa, it relates to creating sound. And the word itself in later meaning sort of transform. It can mean a letter that has a phonetic sound, of course. It can mean a secret. It can mean knowledge or wisdom, very often of an esoteric nature. We have myths relating the runes to a concept called regenkunner. And the word can also be used for a magical song. In these days, when the sun is turning, I find it quite appropriate to do one of these rune songs. And I'm going to do one called Solstice. And the poetry is based on different material from ancient Nordic poetry, both Eddic poetry, but also from these ancient runic proverbs that come from Norwegian early medieval times. Although the structure of the poetry kind of hint towards it being much older. So this is a song about the sun, and the myth goes that she is carried in a chariot pulled by horses with magical runes on their hooves, and she is being chased by wolves and devoured each night, yet to resurrect the day after. So this is Sol.
Oh
shape indicates that you can both play it as a plucked instrument, while many of the other lyres that are found tend to be a bit longer and more narrow. So when you play it, it basically indicates that they are more suited for strumming like this. And by stopping strings, you can make different chords. So this is an instrument that is it's quite diverse in how you can use it, and it's perfect for accompanying both song and storytelling. As the name itself indicates also, lyre come from the word lyric. So, I'm gonna do some more music. And I think I'm gonna do another rune song for you. These old runic proverbs are one of the most important sources we have to the symbolic value of each of the runes. These runic proverbs are, they don't serve you any truth, and when you read them, you are basically left with more questions than you had before. But for me personally, I find that very thought-invigorating and inspiring. There are no truth chiseled in stone, so to say. No dogmas. Nobody died for your sins. But there are, on the other hand, there are many people who in modern rune tradition, there are many people who claim to know the truth, and yeah, modern rune lore is quite far from its origin. Now, this song I'm going to play is called Fear. Fear, or fear, means basically cattle. It's related to wealth, to earthly goods and earthly wealth. The old runic proverbs on this rune is sort of hinting towards another myth that we find up here in the north. We find it several other places in Europe as well. It's the myth of the lindworm, lindorm. And the lindorm has this quality that if it rests upon your gold, the gold increases. But of course there is a flip side to it, because the lindworm itself, or the dragon, grows equally. So you get a big pile of money, but you also get a big dragon. And the poetry also says that wealth is a great thing, but it is also what causes strife amongst kinsmen and amongst friends. So this is my version of this poetry.
Fear, fear, oh fear, fear.
I'm gonna do. There is a lot of poetry written about Ragnarok. A lot of great poetry, and the most famous poems are from a sequence where he is thrown into a snake pit, and he then finds it appropriate to recite some poetry, as one does. And this is one of the, you can say in many ways that, and I know music historians and music archaeologists, they love to say this, that we cannot know how music sounded in, for instance, Viking Age or Bronze Age, and it is true that we can't know exactly, but if you have a broad enough view of the sources, you can say quite a lot on how music sounded back then. One of the things is that we have quite a lot of instruments that are quite limited in what you can and cannot do with it. So to a certain degree, whatever you do on it will be authentic. For instance, the lures, the long lures, one of which was found in the Oslo ship over there. That's an instrument that is locked to a certain scale. If it's long enough, it has 8 notes of the harmonic scale. We also have goat horns and cow horns with 3 playing holes. That also, we can say quite a lot on what's possible to do on it. And we also have poetry, and poetry reveals, Old Norse poetry is extremely advanced, extremely complicated. There are rules for everything, rules for when it's supposed to alliterate, in rhyme, out rhyme, end rhyme, how many syllables in each of the lines, etc. It's really impressive, and the more I study it, the more impressed I get. But what it also indicates is they do have rhythms to them, and they are not like 4/flat, I can tell you that. A lot of these suggestive crooked beats turning, much the same as you see in the oldest folk music here in the north as well. So that is also something to take into account. And in that sense, my point was that skaldic poetry, such as the one I'm going to recite now, is quite different from Eddic poetry in many ways. And of course, the most complicated of the skaldic poetry, the top notch, was something called Drottkveit. And it uses so many kenningar, like synonyms and picturesque descriptions of everything, that a lot of it's basically difficult to interpret today, what it actually means. And it was sort of cunningly composed in such a way that a skald could insult the king. But the king wouldn't understand he had been insulted until the day after, when he was long gone. So, let's do some snake pit poetry. One more thing. Another thing we can say and that was actually my main point by saying all this. Another thing that we know is that they sang in harmony. We know the word tvísöngur. It is still used in Iceland, for instance, and they use it quite a lot in rímur chanting on Iceland. It is basically parallel fifths, very distinct, very Nordic sounding. It has this immediate touch. Now, I'm only one person, but I am gonna demonstrate it by doubling it in that manner on the live. Now, type of instruments we have here in the north, most likely at least. This and horns and flutes of animal bone or human. The oldest finding we have of a horn like this with playing holes is found in Sweden. It's made of cow horn. It's dated to around the 500s. We also have one from, I think, late 700s. It's an instrument that is related to communicating over vast distances. It is sort of the ancient times cellular phone in many ways. So this would be an eye horn 5. It has been 5 played. It is also related to shepherding in the mountains and the forests. Also related to the tradition of kulning, the very old way of singing that we have both here in Norway and in Sweden. It was also used to scare predators. These and also the wooden lures have the same function. I would say horns in general were used to communicate. And instruments like this with playing holes, they were used to play melodies to get the animals back every night. There were systems that where shepherds would be. They knew that certain periods of the month they would be in audible distance to the next shepherd, so they could send messages. So there were melodies when people, when animals were sick, if somebody was sick, somebody had died, etc. It was quite complicated. And they were also used to scare off predators, of course. I would say, there is this old poem saying that the bear hates the sound of the longler, but he loves the song of a goat horn. And I think there seemed to be a pattern between the longlers, or the horns without any playing holes, are mostly for reaching out, calling out, whilst these instruments are more to lure, lokke, also related to locksong, the singing. Nature instruments, they do indeed have a will of their own, which is, for me, that is something that is, of course, part of what makes it beautiful. But also, I have to say that it gives it a level of, well, you can't always plan. And in terms of, we do quite a bit of outdoor concerts, and many of these instruments are very sensitive to weather, basically, to temperature and to moist, especially. And so when it has happened more than one occasion where I'm supposed to take my goat horn and do this epic tune, and I end up sounding like a sick cow. But that's what you get. But you also, you know, it's added value in any case, I think. Now, I'm gonna play a short tune for you, and let's hope I don't sound like a sick cow. This is a taglharpa. Tagl means horsehair, and it's called that because the strings are made of horsehair. This is the oldest bowed instruments we have up here in the north. In Finland, Finland is the place where the use of this instrument survived for the longest. They call it jouhikko, and they basically used these instruments at least up until early 1900s. Then it disappeared for a short while, and they revived the use of it in the 60s. It's the oldest depiction we have of this instrument is found in Nidarosdomen in a big church in Trondheim, basically. In the oldest part of it, there is this small statue sitting and playing on an instrument like this. That is from, I think, early 1200s or late 1100s, I'm not sure. Whether or not they had instruments like this in Viking Age, that's something that is debated. And I know a lot of academics, they believe it didn't arrive until maybe early 1100s. I actually think it was earlier, and for some reason, I don't know why the archaeologists don't mention this, but in Hedeby there is actually a string instrument found together with a bow, which was found it's dated to early 900s. So they didn't know what a bowed instrument was. So in my book, I would say these people definitely were using bowed instruments. But of course I can't prove it. This is also an instrument that does not always behave because the strings are very sensitive. Okay, Mr. Sound Guy, now you can do it. I'm gonna do a song about magic. Is of course related. It basically means it's the Proto-Norse or Proto-Scandinavian word for our year. And in ancient times here, we used to have this almost like a of course I can't find the right word for it now, but sort of like a small spell, well-wishing spell that you sent when you greeted people, and that is till Ars of Fridar, means good year's harvest and peace. And this song is definitely related to those seeds you sow in the hopes you sow in these darkest times. Jeg såg og jeg tydde når solen snudde, jartegn for fe og heim, svart natt, solhov. Forår og frida. I urge you to reflect upon what is the lost context. You're actually reading something that was not supposed to be experienced in that way at all. How did it sound? What was the setting? And you know, when I was talking about how complicated this type of poetry really was, to add another layer to it, you can, it's my, to me, when reading or when singing Rødluspå, because sometimes it doesn't help you only by reading. Sometimes you need to see how it works in real life, because there are a lot of things that work on paper in a hypothesis, but I think that performers in all times, in all cultures, they work. The most important rule you have is you have to be adaptive, and it basically comes down to what works and what doesn't work in relation with an audience. That's a set of rules that, of course, is difficult to relate to for people, for scholars making hypotheses. But thankfully, more and more scholars are interested in these practical approaches as well. They see it as a value. And yeah, I've had many very interesting conversations with them, because it does really come down to what works and what doesn't work. Every room is different. Every audience is different. Every time I go on stage if I would go on stage here in an hour, it would be different. So you need to always be adaptive, be responsive. That's sort of the set of rules of performance, which is timeless. This poem is, it's even, when I sing it, you could even get a sense of the person who composed it. There seemed to even be this, they use words and sounds to mimic the contents of the poems also. So for instance, when the poem speaks about creation, there are a lot of sounds, and when it goes to shits and people start killing each other, the sounds get more hard, more sk, and yeah, things like that. My point is that I have such deep respect for this art form. It must have been to work with poetry like this. It's really hard to really comprehend these people who could do this, make poetry in a snap, basically, and they had a repertoire of perhaps a couple of hundred songs with a couple of hundred verses each. most of us have trouble remembering our own phone number today. So it is sort of a lost tradition in a sense. So, the poem of Völuspá is the poem where we get familiar with the myth of Ragnarok, or most vividly familiar at least. And personally, I think it's very often confused with the more linear way of thinking than might have been the origin. For me, it seems more like the end of a circle. And if it's the end of the circle, it's the beginning, and not this. I don't see it as this doomsday poem. So I'm going to do an excerpt of it. The poem is 60-something verses, and I don't think I should do them all. I would fall asleep. So we'll see how many I remember. fire knipa hödlig, fast stormen slitna en frö